Good evening. It is not a news story most ever expected to hear. A former US president tonight turned convicted criminal. But as we go to where it is a grim reality Donald Trump is now dealing with, following an historic verdict inside a New York courtroom. He was found guilty of felony charges, 34 all up, after he doctored his business records to cover up hush money paid to a former porn star he's accused of having an affair with. And now, for each of those 34 charges, he could face up to 4 years behind bars. Our US correspondent, Catherine Firkin, begins our coverage.
As far as speeches go, this was both historic and all too familiar.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace.
Donald Trump lashing out at the judge, the jury and the justice system in his new reality of being a convicted felon.
Our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess.
He was found guilty on 34 charges relating to falsifying business records to influence the 2016 election. After just 2 days of deliberations, jurors agreed. The 45th President of the United States and the presumptive Republican nominee had broken the law.
While this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors.
Outside court, opponents erupted into cheers and applause, while his supporters were irate.
Viva Trump! Viva Trump! They're destroying our city, our country. That's what they're doing.
There's no thought process. We're voting for President Trump. That's it. Done.
Sentencing is set for July 11, just 4 days before the Republican National Convention. Trump faces up to 4 years behind bars, but most legal experts agree that probation without a jail term is most likely. Immediately after the verdict, the former president retreated to his Trump Tower sanctuary on Fifth Avenue, leaving the last word up to the city he claims he helped build, and which just wrote him into the history books for all the wrong reasons. Catherine Firkin for 10 News First, New York.
As Donald Trump stares down a potential prison sentence, the big question now is what happens next? Sentencing is scheduled for July 11, but that's just after the first presidential debate and just before the Republican convention, where his nomination is due to be confirmed. Despite the conviction, Trump can still run for a return to the White House. But tonight, there is a new and very different complexion to his battle with Joe Biden.
Nothing in the US Constitution prevents a convicted felon from becoming president, which makes this, at least, true.
But the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people.
But how much will his criminal convictions shift the vote? Polling companies have been putting that question in the lead-up to today's verdict. One poll found 24% of Trump voters might reconsider their support. But that's just a might. Another shows 80% of Trump supporters are locked in and loyal. Only 4% would definitely abandon him on the basis of conviction. And there is no evidence those votes would shift to Joe Biden.
His base is welded on. I don't think he's lost any votes.
An analysis of all polls over the last 3 months up until the verdict shows Donald Trump holding a consistent, narrow lead. Remember, 3 other criminal cases still stand against Trump, but they won't be resolved before November. There's the federal indictment that he incited the riots on Capitol Hill in a conspiracy to overturn the last election result. A state case of electoral fraud continues in Georgia, and there's a second federal criminal action over his handling of classified documents. The White House reaction to today's convictions was brief. We respect the rule of law, though others enjoyed the moment.
Thank you so much. Anything going on today?
But Joe Biden's big test is just 4 weeks away in the first debate.
Trump is saying you're demented. You can't put 2 sentences together. If Biden looks weak, if Trump beats him, Biden could be paralysed.
One international security agency is warning Australians that incidents of violence are likely in the coming hours and days as Americans react to today's verdict. Australia's official travel advice has not changed.
Hugh Remington is with me now for further analysis. A critical question, I guess, Hugh, is will he be campaigning from jail? Is there any real prospect of that?
Well, the answer is probably zero, Sandra. The judge can send him to jail. The crimes allow a sentence of up to 4 years, but Trump is already planning an appeal and would doubtless retain his freedom pending that result. His lawyers also argue that any other 77-year-old American citizen with no previous criminal history on this level of charges would not be sent to jail, so nor should he. And there is a question of what kind of jail could he be sent to. No authority would take the risk of putting him certainly into the general prison population. The sentence, though, as we've heard, will come just days before Trump's big triumphal political show, the Republican National Convention. This is where he is formally declared the candidate and announces his running mate. So all of this will still be in play at that time. In his home state of Florida, intriguingly, convicted felons are not allowed to vote. But given the conviction was in New York State, there is a loophole which would at least spare him the indignity of being the first presidential candidate who is not allowed to vote for himself, Sandra.
Watch this space. All right, Hugh, thank you.